Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is fantastic to have you with us again. Today we're tackling a topic that, well, it feels really cutting edge, maybe even a bit complex at first glance, but it's absolutely shaping our digital future. We're talking about blockchain. Now, we've gathered quite a stack of sources for this, specifically a professional guide looking at blockchain in the UAE, plus some related research. So our mission today, it's pretty clear actually. We're going to really dissect what blockchain is, get to the core, understand the fundamental problems it's trying to solve, and explore why the UAE, why they've jumped in so enthusiastically. They're not just adopting it, they're really aiming to lead, right? And maybe most importantly, for anyone listening who's involved or interested in this space, we need to shine a really bright light on the rules, the regulations, and the potential risks involved. Because it's not just about the cool tech, it's about the framework, the system that lets it work, or sometimes causes problems. Think of this as your shortcut, your guide to understanding this digital revolution, especially in a place like the UAE that's fast becoming a global hub for it.
Absolutely. And it's a really crucial deep dive today. The UAE is just such a fascinating case study. You've got this very deliberate government-led innovation happening in the blockchain space. It's quite different from how it emerged in other places, more bottom up. So yeah, we'll definitely explore the huge potential, the excitement around it. But just as much, we need to look closely at the rules, the vital guardrails being put in place, the oversight. Understanding those regulations isn't just, ticking boxes. It's key to seeing the whole picture, the promise, and the potential pitfalls.
Okay, right. Let's back this in. Before we get into the UAE's specific strategy, we really need solid ground. So back to basics. What is blockchain exactly? Well, at its heart, it's a type of digital system. A distributed ledger, they call it. Think of it like a database, yeah. But one designed to record and secure information in a really different way. The key things are, the information is transparent. People who are allowed can see it. It's unchangeable. That's a huge deal compared to normal databases. And it's shared across a whole network of computers or participants. One of our sources put it really well. It's like a digital ledger, maybe like a shared notebook or register. But, and this is the kicker, once something is written down, properly added, it cannot be erased or edited, ever. It's locked in by code. And imagine hundreds, maybe thousands of people, all holding identical copies of this exact same notebook. Now, if one person tries to cheat, maybe change a page in their copy or even just makes a mistake, everyone else has their perfect copy to instantly see the difference, to catch the error. That's basically how it maintains truth, how it builds trust in the system.
And it manages all this without needing one central boss, like a bank or government agency, checking everything. It's trust built into the network itself.
And that is what's truly revolutionary about it, isn't it? It goes way beyond just being a fancy database. When we ask, why is this important? We're really asking why the specific system built on distributed, unchangeable truth has become such a massive focus globally. For governments, for industries, our source points out it's important because it tackles three really big, persistent problems we've always had with digital systems, especially when sharing data or dealing with valuable things online. So number one, trust. Think about traditional systems. We usually trust a central player, right? A bank, maybe a social media site, a government department. They hold the master copy, the single source of truth. We trust them to keep accurate records, protect our data, act fairly. Blockchain just flips that whole model because everyone on the network has the same identical cryptographically secured version of the data. There's no single weak point to attack or manipulate. The truth is spread out, agreed upon by the network using a consensus mechanism. So you're not trusting one single company or agency. You're trusting the maths, the cryptography, the network's process. And the implications of that? Well, they're huge for areas needing transparency and integrity. Supply chains, legal docs, identity. For a country like the UAE, pushing to be a global hub, this kind of verifiable trust is gold. It underpins international business, secures their digital economy. Second big problem it solves, security. Because of how it's built the cryptography, the distribution blockchain data is incredibly hard to change or hack. Each block of data is mathematically linked to the one before it, creating this unbreakable chain. If someone wanted to tamper with an old record, they'd have to redo that block and all the blocks that came after it and do it on potentially thousands of computers across the network, all faster than the network adds new blocks. It's practically impossible for a well-secured, decentralized blockchain. That makes it way more secure than stuffing everything onto one central server, which is just one big target.
Yeah.
Especially relevant now with cyber threats constantly rising. And third, transparency. Every single transaction, every bit of data added gets recorded, timestamped, and you can trace it. Now, on public blockchains, anyone can look at the transactions, though usually it's pseudonymous, so your real name isn't attached to a wallet address. But even on private or permissioned ones used by companies or governments, you get these incredible audit trails. This transparency builds accountability. You can track something, an asset, a piece of data, right from the start, all the way through.
Yeah.
No hidden steps. That helps solve issues where things were murky before. It allows much better oversight, which is exactly why governments like the UAE are so keen on it for things like land titles, legal records, tracking goods. So these three things, trust, security, transparency, they really change the game for digital interactions. Moving away from trusting just one central point towards trusting a verifiable distributed system.
Okay, that makes sense. The why is clear, solving trust, security, transparency issues. But the how does this digital magic actually happen, step by step? It can still feel a bit abstract. Our source breaks it down into 5 pretty simple steps, which helps. So first step, a transaction happens. And transaction here doesn't just mean sending money, although that's a big use case. It could be anything needing a secure record. Buying property, like you mentioned. A company issuing a digital certificate for a luxury watch. A hospital updating a patient record. Basically any event or data that needs to be logged permanently and reliably. Second, that transaction, once it happens, gets grouped into a block. Think of block as just a digital container, okay? A secure little package holding a bunch of these new transactions that have just happened, like preparing a new page for that shared digital ledger we talked about. But instead of one entry, it's a collection, all time-stamped together. Third, and this is crucial, this new block needs to be verified by the network of computers, the nodes. This is where the decentralization really kicks in. It's not one main computer saying, yes, this is okay. Lots of independent computers on the network. They all work together, basically solving complex math puzzles, to confirm that the transactions in the block are legitimate, valid, not fraudulent. And because so many are checking, no single person can just sneak a fake transaction through. The network would spot it and reject the block. That's the consensus part they have to agree. Fourth step. Once the block passes verification, gets the thumbs up for the network, which can happen really fast. Seconds or minutes, it gets added to the existing chain of blocks. And that's literally why it's called blockchain, block plus chain. Each new block is cryptographically linked to the one right before it, forming this continuous, unbroken chronological record, like links in a chain. So the chain represents the entire history, every single transaction ever confirmed, right back to the very beginning. And the fifth, final step. Everyone on the network gets a copy of the updated chain. As soon as that new block is added, everyone's digital ledger gets updated automatically. They all have the latest version. This constant syncing reinforces that no single point of control idea.
There's no master copy that could be corrupted or lost. If one computer goes offline or one copy somehow gets messed up, it doesn't break the system. Thousands of other identical copies exist. Understanding those 5 steps really helps see why the rules and regulations are so important, doesn't it? Especially when you're talking about records you can never change. Building solid systems around this is key. Right, so we've got the basics down. What blockchain is, why it matters, the steps involved. Now let's zoom right in on the UAE, because as you said, they haven't just dipped their toes in, they've really gone all in. A global leader. This wasn't just a casual experiment. It felt like a very deliberate strategy. When did this really kick off for them, and what was the driving force? Why so keen? Our sources point to around 2018, maybe bleeding into 2019, as when the UAE government really started actively pushing blockchain adoption in a big way. It wasn't just one department trying something, it felt like a national strategic move. And a huge part of that was launching the Emirates Blockchain Strategy 2021. That name alone tells you the ambition, right? The goals were seriously forward-thinking.
First off, they aimed to shift 50% half of all applicable government transactions on the blockchain platforms. And this wasn't just about going paperless. It was specifically using blockchain's features, the security, the transparency to get real results, like improving efficiency across the board in public services, making things faster, building more trust in how government operates. Think about all the paperwork, the queues, the physical visits needed for so many government things, visas, business licenses, you name it. A big aim was slashing paper usage and cutting down the need for people and businesses to physically go to government offices, making public services smoother, more reliable, basically transforming how citizens interact with the state. I mean, digitizing half of all government transactions using blockchain, that's a massive undertaking. It really shows a focus on improving services for you, the end user, whether you're a resident or a business. Huge foresight.
Exactly. And that scale, that speed of adoption, is precisely why the UAE is seen as a world leader here. It's not just talk or small pilots. They've pushed it into critical sectors, showing it works at scale. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, like you said, it's not just tech for tech's sake. It's absolutely tied to their national strategy, diversifying the economy beyond oil, becoming more competitive globally, transforming public services to be, well, world class. It really sets a benchmark for how other governments might embrace these kinds of decentralized systems. It's a bold vision for digital governance. And we're seeing this leadership in several key areas, showing how comprehensive their strategy is. For instance, real estate tokenization. They've made real strides here. This means using blockchain to break down ownership of, say, an apartment building into smaller digital tokens you can buy and sell easily. It makes investing in property much more accessible, lowers the entry barrier, more liquid too. Then there's digital government records. Using blockchain to secure things like your digital ID, the UAE Pass is a great example, or health records, educational certificates. It boosts data integrity, cuts down fraud, and makes it easier to securely access your own vital information. Beyond that, look at logistics and shipping. Their ports, like DP World, are huge global players. They're using blockchain to track goods moving across borders. Imagine a transparent, unchangeable record of where a container has been from start to finish. That massively boosts efficiency, cuts paperwork, reduces the risk of fraud or delays in supply chains. It's huge for global trade. Healthcare, too, using it to manage patient records securely, maintaining privacy but allowing doctors or hospitals to share necessary info safely. And of course, banking. Banks are heavily exploring it for faster, cheaper international payments, for trade finance documentation, basically trying to speed up how money moves globally, cutting out some of the old slow steps. It really is a broad push across society and the economy, showing how they're applying these core blockchain ideas to solve real-world problems.
Okay, this is where it gets really crucial, I think, especially for anyone listening who's thinking about launching something, investing, or even just using services in this space in the UAE. With all this rapid adoption, there have to be rules, right? You can't just have a free-for-all. So who actually can use blockchain there? And maybe more importantly, who definitely needs to get permission first? Let's get into the regulatory side. Our sources lay out who's generally eligible or already using it. Obviously, government departments are big users, driving that national strategy. They're implementing it for licensing, land registry, all sorts. Then you have licensed private companies. They can use blockchain in their operations if they follow the existing laws and any specific rules for their industry. So businesses improving efficiency, supply chains, etc. Also, financial institutions, banks, fintech firms, they're key players, testing and rolling out blockchain for payments, asset management, you name it. And we mentioned real estate tokenization platforms like SmartCrowd. Those are popping up, allowing fractional ownership via blockchain tokens, making property investment easier, and of course, regulated digital asset exchanges, places where you can legally trade cryptocurrencies and other virtual assets, but under strict rules and oversight. So these are the sort of established players operating within clear boundaries. Now, here's the really critical part, the need permission bit. And anyone thinking of starting something needs to listen closely here. If you want to get into the blockchain or virtual asset game in the UAE, you absolutely need the green light in several situations. First, if you're launching any new blockchain-based business, doesn't matter what it does, you need the right licenses and approvals from the relevant authority. It's not the Wild West, it's structured. Second, if your project involves issuing tokens or any kind of digital asset, a new cryptocurrency, a token representing shares in something, a utility token for your platform, definitely need permission. This is watched very closely because of the investment and scam risks. And third, if you plan to provide virtual asset services, this is broad, running an exchange platform, holding crypto for others, custody, swapping fiat money for crypto, building wallets.
All that needs specific permission. So the takeaway, if you're building, investing, or even heavily using services in these areas, knowing these rules and the need for permission is non-negotiable, essential for operating legally.
Absolutely. And understanding who gives that permission is vital. The UAE's regulatory structure for this is quite sophisticated, maybe even a bit complex at first glance. It's not just one big regulator. It's a network of specialized authorities, each handling different things or different geographical zones, like the free zones. And you might ask, why so many? Well, it seems to reflect a very deliberate, nuanced approach, trying to regulate specific activities, finance versus general tech, and specific areas very precisely. It aims for specialized oversight, creating this comprehensive regulatory net. Let's break down the main players our sources mention. First, there's VAR, the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. This one is specifically for Dubai, excluding the DIFC Financial Free Zone. VRA has a really broad mandate. If you're doing anything with crypto, blockchain tokens, NFTs, related services in Dubai, VARA is almost certainly your main point of contact. Their goal is clear: create a safe environment that attracts legitimate businesses but cracks down hard on illicit activity and protects consumers. They've been very active. Then you have the ADGM FSRA. That's the Financial Services Regulatory Authority within the Abu Dhabi global market. ADGM is a major financial free zone in Abu Dhabi. The FSRA regulates blockchain activities within that zone, focusing heavily on fintech, digital assets, crypto exchanges, custodians, etc., operating within ADGM's framework. They were actually quite early in setting up detailed crypto regulations. Similarly, in Dubai, you have the DIFC DFSA, the Dubai Financial Services Authority operating within the Dubai International Financial Center. DIFC is another big financial free zone. The DFSA regulates financial institutions and fintech blockchain startups specifically setting up inside the DIFC. Their focus is very much on the financial services angle, digital securities, investment tokens, crypto funds within their established common law framework. So within Dubai itself, you have VIRA covering the broader emirate and DFSA specifically for the DIFC financial zone. And finally, there's the TDRA, the Telecom and Digital Government Regulatory Authority. Their role is a bit different. While VIRA, ADGM, and DFSA focus on the assets, the services, the financial side, TDRA looks after the underlying infrastructure. So things like blockchain hosting services, the network infrastructure itself, cloud services supporting blockchain applications. If you're providing that foundational tech layer, TDRA is likely the regulator you deal with for permits and standards. And crucially, underpinning all of this, no matter which authority you deal with or where you operate, is one absolute requirement. Every single project must strictly follow AML and KYC laws. Anti-money laundering and know your customer. This is non-negotiable. Why? Because while blockchain can be transparent, crypto transactions can sometimes be anonymous or pseudonymous, which unfortunately criminals try to exploit for money laundering or financing illegal activities. So AML KYC rules force businesses in this space to verify their customers' identities, monitor transactions for suspicious activity, report anything dodgy, and generally prevent their platforms from being used for crime. It's all about ensuring the UAE fosters real innovation but keeps the financial system clean and protected. It's a multi-layered approach, balancing progress with essential security and integrity.
Right. So it sounds like a powerful technology, clearly embraced by the UAE, but with a pretty robust set of rules and specific authorities overseeing it. Now, every powerful technology seems to have, well, two sides, doesn't it? The amazing benefits, but also the challenges and risks. Let's talk through those. First, the pros, the upsides that are driving all this excitement. Number one has to be security. We touched on this, but it's worth emphasizing. That cryptographic linking and distributed nature make it incredibly tough to hack or change data once it's confirmed. That level of security is massive for critical information money, identity, property records. It builds fundamental trust in digital systems. Then, transparency. Especially on public blockchains, everyone can see the transactions, even if names are hidden. That visibility fosters accountability. Think supply chains tracking goods from farm to table, or verifying charitable donations. It cuts through opacity. Also, speed and efficiency. Blockchain can cut out steps and automate processes, making things much faster than old paper-based systems. Cross-border payments are a classic example, potentially going from days down to minutes. That's huge for business. And that often means no middleman. Blockchain allows peer-to-peer interaction, potentially removing intermediaries like banks or brokers who add costs and delays. That disintermediation can make things cheaper and more direct. It also provides easy tracking. Every transaction is time-stamped and linked forever on the chain. That creates a perfect, unchangeable audit trail. Great for compliance, resolving disputes, just knowing the history of something. And finally, automation, using smart contracts. These are basically bits of code on the blockchain that automatically execute agreements when conditions are met, like automatically releasing payment when a delivery is confirmed. It cuts out manual steps, speeds things up, reduces errors. So yeah, these benefits really paint a picture of a potentially much more efficient, secure, and trustworthy digital future. You can see the appeal.
Absolutely. The potential is undeniable. But, and this is crucial, just as important as understanding those benefits is getting a really clear-eyed view of the cons, or maybe better put, the inherent risks and challenges. This is where we need that critical thinking. It's not about being negative, it's about being realistic and prepared. Okay, first big one, especially for global projects, regulatory uncertainty. Now, the UAE is quite proactive and clear, as we've discussed, but globally, it's still a patchwork. Laws are developing, changing, often lagging behind the tech. So what's perfectly legal and regulated in the UAE might be in a gray area or even restricted somewhere else. This makes it really tough for international businesses. How do you ensure compliance everywhere? How do you make systems talk to each other across borders with different rules? This global inconsistency can definitely slow down adoption and create risks for companies operating across jurisdictions. It raises that question. How do you navigate this evolving global landscape? Then there's energy usage. This is a big one that gets a lot of press. Some older blockchains, particularly Bitcoin, using proof of work, need vast amounts of electricity to run the computers that verify transactions. This obviously raises serious environmental concerns about the carbon footprint. Now, the industry is moving towards solutions. Proof of stake is much, much more energy efficient, and many newer chains use it, or older ones are switching. But the energy consumption of some major blockchains is still a significant issue and a valid criticism. Another challenge is technical complexity. Let's be honest, blockchain isn't simple stuff. Understanding topography, distributed systems, it's complex for the average user. And building secure, effective blockchain applications requires very specialized skills, which are still relatively scarce. This complexity can be a barrier to wider adoption. If people find it confusing or hard to use, they won't use it. And finding enough skilled developers is also a challenge. There's this tension, between the ideal of decentralization and the practical need for things to be user-friendly. And here's a risk that comes directly from one of its core strengths: irreversibility. Remember, we said transactions can't be changed once confirmed. That's great for security. But what if you make a mistake? Send crypto to the wrong address. Authorize a flawed smart contract. It's permanent. There's no undo button, no central bank to call and ask for a reversal. That finality puts a huge amount of responsibility on the user. You have to be incredibly careful, double check everything, because mistakes can be permanent and costly. Finally, and this is a persistent problem, the risk of scams. Because it's new, exciting tech involving money, it attracts fraudsters, fake projects, tokens that disappear overnight, rug pulls, misleading investment schemes. They're unfortunately common. Scammers prey on the hype, the complexity, and sometimes people's lack of understanding. And connecting this back to the regulations, this is exactly why authorities like VRA and ADGM, FSRA are so vital. By licensing legitimate players, setting standards, and watching for fraud, they try to protect consumers and ensure the real innovation isn't drowned out by scams. It's about building trust in the ecosystem itself. So yeah, understanding these risks, regulation, energy, complexity, irreversibility, scams, it's not about being scared off. It's about going in with your eyes open, making informed choices, and building robust, responsible systems.
Okay, so we've done the theory, the rules, the pros, the cons. Now let's make it real. How is all this actually being used on the ground in the UAE? Because they're not just talking about it, they're doing it. We need some concrete examples. Well, one big one is the Dubai Land Department, DLD. They're using blockchain for registering property title deeds. They're aiming to build this whole blockchain-powered real estate system. Imagine how that changes things. Property deals can be slow, full of paperwork, prone to errors or fraud. Putting titles on a blockchain makes ownership clear, transparent, instantly verifiable. It should speed up buying and selling, cut costs, reduce disputes, and just generally make the whole market more efficient and trustworthy. That's a massive practical application. Another great example, Smart Dubai. That's the government body leading Dubai's whole digital shift. They've used blockchain for things like government licensing, getting a business license, renewing permits. Historically, that could be a nightmare of forms and waiting. Using blockchain streamlines it massively. Makes it faster, more transparent, reduces errors, cuts waiting times, makes it easier to do business.
That directly impacts people's lives and the economy. And in the private sector, we mentioned platforms like SmartCrowd using blockchain for fractional property ownership. That's really innovative. It takes an expensive asset like an apartment, tokenizes it on the blockchain, and lets lots of smaller investors buy tiny shares. It opens up real estate investment to people who couldn't afford it before, makes the market more liquid, more inclusive. That's democratizing finance, in a way. And finally, banks. They are definitely experimenting and starting to implement blockchain, especially for things like trade finance, managing the complex documents and payments for international shipping and remittances, sending money across borders. Blockchain promises to make these processes faster, cheaper, and more secure by cutting out intermediaries and manual checks. We're seeing banks pilot projects for instant international payments, digitizing letters of credit. So these aren't just ideas. They're real changes affecting how you might buy a house, start a company, or send money home. Blockchain is already becoming part of the fabric there.
Exactly. So pulling it all together, what's the big picture here? Well, this deep dive really confirms that blockchain is a foundational technology. It's changing how we think about trust in digital systems. That distributed, immutable ledger idea is powerful. And in the UAE, it's not just an idea. It's embraced, it's regulated, it's being actively implemented across key sectors, real estate, government, finance. They're really pushing the envelope. And this is probably the most critical takeaway for anyone listening who wants to get involved. You must deal with the regulations. Getting the right licenses, the proper approvals from APAR or ADGM, FSRA, or DIFC, DFSA, or TDRA, depending on what you're doing and where, it's absolutely essential. And adhering strictly to those AML and KYC laws is paramount. The UAE wants innovation, yes, but responsible, compliant innovation within a secure framework. So you weigh the incredible benefits of transparency, security, speed, automation against those very real risks we discussed. The regulatory hurdles, the energy debate, the technical barriers, the finality of transactions, the ever-present risk of scams. It offers so much, but it comes with significant responsibilities, both legal and practical. You need to understand both sides of that coin.
Definitely. So for our final thought today, consider this. The UAE has clearly decided to be a pioneer, not just using blockchain, but actively building a comprehensive regulatory system around it, maybe learning from the chaos seen elsewhere in the early crypto days. This proactive top-down approach, balancing innovation with strict rules, is quite unique globally. So what does this signal to other countries still figuring out how to handle blockchain? Could the UAE model become influential? And how might this specific blend of fast tech adoption and strong oversight shape the future of the global digital economy? Things like digital assets, tokenization, cross-border payments. It's fascinating to watch. We really hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture, maybe sparked some more questions about this space. What really stood out to you from our discussion today? Thanks for joining us, and we hope you'll tune in for our next deep dive.